Hi, I'm Dr. Marlene Phillip. I'm a trauma informed educator and counselor, life and neuro coach. My focus is on helping people understand and interrupt trauma based patterns, especially in relationships, in their finances, and how they respond under stress. So, as you can hear my voice, I am just overcoming a cold, but I insist that I have to give you this training despite my voice, right? So let's get into it. So if you ever said, I know better, but still keep doing the same thing, then this training is for you. I'm not talking about a lack of awareness because clearly you are aware. Some of you are aware. I'm not talking about motivation, and I'm definitely not talking about willpower. I'm talking about patterns, automatic responses in your nervous system, right? Your nervous system have learned this a long time ago and keeps repeating even when they no longer serve you. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to explain what trauma-based patterns actually are, where they tend to show up in your life, and what it really means to interrupt them. So, a disclaimer, this isn't therapy and it's not about fixing you. It's about understanding what's happening so you can respond differently. So, trauma doesn't just create emotional pain, it creates patterns. A trauma based pattern is an automatic response your nervous system learned in order for you to survive, in order for you to stay safe or to reduce some type of distress in your life. So these patterns formed because the nervous system prioritizes familiarity, not preference. Familiar feels safer because our brain loves what's predictable. So familiar feels safer than unfamiliar because that's the unknown, right? So even when the familiar is uncomfortable or harmful, it doesn't matter. Our brain prioritizes familiarity. It wants to predict everything. So this is why insight alone doesn't stop patterns. Knowing something is unhealthy lives in the thinking part of the brain, which is the prefrontal cortex. Patterns live in the body and the nervous system. So you can know better. And many of you, I'm sure you know better. I've been there. I've known the thing. I know what not to do. I know not to, I don't want that again, right? So I know it consciously. I know I don't want that, right? So you can know better, understand your history, and still repeat the same response, still repeat the same financial dynamics and relationship dynamics because the nervous system is running the show faster than your conscious thoughts. Like I always say, no amount of conscious programming or conscious thinking can override a subconscious programming. That's not a personal failure, honey. That's how the brain works under stress. So, when I say patterns, I'm not talking about personality traits. I'm talking about repeated responses that show up automatically in your relationships. This can look like choosing emotionally unavailable partners, right? Even though you say, I don't want this type of relationship. I don't want this, but yet I find myself here again in the same cycle, right? Overgiving or people pleasing, pulling away when things get close. That's like an avoidant attachment. Staying longer than you want to. You know, this is not working, but for some reason, I'm still here. So even though you know it's not working, you're still here, right? With money patterns, often it looks like overspending to soothe stress or shopping therapy, right? Avoiding financial decisions, staying stuck in scarcity even when income increases. You know, I know some people who, and I was one of those people, so no shame, no blame, because this is a nervous system thing, right? And it's a learned behavior. Even though you got a promotion, you got a raise, you found yourself right back in the same, like the financial thermostat kind of thing, right? Feeling anxiety or guilt around money, no matter how much you make at work or with responsibility. This pattern can look like overfunctioning, taking on more than is yours, the difficulty resting, feeling responsible for everyone else. These are not random behaviors, my friends. They are organized responses shaped by your early experiences. And like I said, they are learned behavior. But now, here's the most important question: why does the same kind of response, or you find yourself in the same situation, show up in so many different areas of your life? That's a trauma based pattern. That is a trauma based pattern. And trauma based pattern don't stay contained in one area of life. How we do one thing is how we do everything else. They repeat across systems. So you might notice the same underlying response showing up, like I said, in your relationship, in your money, in your work responsibility, in your boundaries, in your caregiving roles, um, unpaid emotional or practical labor. The content changes, but the pattern stays the same. That's because the nervous system isn't responding to the situation, it's responding to perceived safety or a threat. So once you see this, it stops feeling like you're bad at relationships. Like some people say that, oh, I think I'm bad with money or I'm bad with relationship, but it's a pattern. It's a learned behavior. So once you see that, you start to see that loop instead of seeing yourself as somebody who's bad at relationships or bad with money. So most trauma-based patterns follow a similar loop. Trigger, then it goes into your body responds to that trigger. Then there's an automatic response, short term relief, whatever that is, and then repetition. Here we go again, right? So some people who have impulse shopping, that it's a trigger, something trigger, and they feel that reaction in their body, and then they have a automatic response, and the short term relief will be go and shop, go on Amazon and shop, and then they feel relief, that dopamine hit, and then they go right back again because then they have buyer's remorse, right? They're trying to fill a void with shopping, with stuff, with things that it can't work. That's why they keep going back. They want that same high. It's just like an addiction, right? The relief is important to your brain. So even if the outcome isn't what you want, the nervous system gets a relief from doing what it already knows. That relief reinforces the pattern. That's why you keep doing it over again. And this is why pattern persists. It doesn't persist because you choose them, but because they are familiar and regulating in short term. Like I said, you get that high, that dopamine hit. You feel good in the moment, but then after a while, that feeling dies out because there's a deeper void, right? So understanding this removes the shame, and it creates clarity. So interrupting a pattern does not mean suppressing your emotions, forcing yourself to be better, fixing your past, or controlling your reactions. Interrupting means creating a pause. Even a brief pause allows the thinking part of the brain, your prefrontal cortex, to come back online. Because usually, when we experience trauma, that part of the brain goes offline temporarily. That's a whole nother story and another training by itself, right? It literally goes offline. And this is why sometimes you feel as though you have no control. Like I'm trying to do this and you're trying with willpower and it's not working, it's not happening. And that's why, right? So even a brief pause, what it does, it allows you the prefrontal cortex to come back online and to give you access to choice again. That pause to choice again. But when that part of the brain is offline, your amygdala is running the show, which is the fear center part of the brain, the emotion center. So the pause might be one breath, 1 second of awareness, not noticing what's happening in your body, delaying a response instead of reacting immediately. That pause changes the direction of the loop. That one pause. Isn't that something? Right? So this is where real change begin. Not with insight alone, not with, oh, I know what to do, I am aware, but with interruption in real time. So if this helped you understand why you keep repeating patterns, I want you to know this, right? You are not broken. You are patterned, and patterns can be interrupted. So if you want support learning how to interrupt trauma-based patterns as they happen in your life, in your relationship, in your money, that's the work I do. So go ahead and book a pattern interruption call. This is focused, it's focused on identifying. So while we are on that call, we are going to focus on identifying the pattern that keeps repeating in your life, understand what's driving that pattern, and clarify what interruption would look like in your life. So if this training helped you put language to what you've been experiencing, you don't have to figure out the next step alone because you've been doing that for a long time, right? So go ahead and book a pattern interruption call to explore working together, and let's end this pattern once and for all. So thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the other side.